And I introduced myself. I'm Kanani Reed. I'm a volunteer for the Nebraska Vietnam Veteran Memorial Foundation, here to do an interview with you. I have a couple questions at first, just basic information like your name and your next of kin and some branch of service questions, and then we will get into the entire interview.
Okay.
Your full name?
Walter Roy Love.
And where do you live right now?
Elkhorn.
Elkhorn? And where were you born?
Amory, Amory, Mississippi.
Mississippi. On what day?
March 25, 1946.
Do you have a next of kin?
Like my spouse?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Your spouse's name?
Ramona.
And what branch of service were you in?
The Army.
The Army? Are you active duty or reserves?
I was drafted. Let me think. That's kind of you had to explain it. I received my draft notice in November, and I joined for some training. I had to take an extra year in December, so I went in January 67.
January of 1967, official date. And when did you leave the Army?
Okay. Initially, January 67 to December 69.
Okay.
And after a year and a half, I took another term of service. Some guy goes call it hitch, another 3 years. From June 71 to June 74.
Oh.
So I had 6 years of active duty.
Okay. What was the highest rank you had when serving? So in June of 1974, what was your rank?
E6. That won't reflect on my DD 214. I went before the promotion board in April or something like that. Mm-hmm. And through circumstances, I decided just to separate. And I was talking to my friend, well, a lifelong buddy there, and he told me that I had received promotion orders, right after I left. Mm-hmm. So I consider myself an E6, And I joined the reserve in June 74.
Oh, okay.
And did 17 years and retired in 92, 91. Oh, I guess it was 91. Whenever Desert Storm was over, they let me retire.
Oh, so that's awesome. Well, we have a lot to talk about since you've got a couple different services here. So let's, before we get into that though, where did you go to high school? Just
Fremont, Nebraska, Fremont High.
Oh, so when did you move to Nebraska then? Let's start with that.
1963.
Okay. And, this is what I want. So in 1963, you guys moved to Nebraska and into Fremont?
Yeah.
And then you graduated out of Fremont High?
65, yeah.
And then so you didn't go until you were drafted in November of 1966?
I received a draft notice in November 66. Between that time, I attended Universal Trade. I think they call it Universal Trades School when I went. And I think it's corporation now called United Trades Institute. I'm not sure, but they used to be downtown on Capitol Street, but I haven't been down there in 40 years, so I don't know where they're who's what.
So what were you in trade for? Like, what trade were you doing?
Refrigeration and air conditioner repair.
Okay.
That was going to be my career path, I thought.
And then you got the draft notice.
Well, okay, that's another story unto itself.
I want to hear it.
I got the draft notice. My dad was a World War II veteran. He'd been wounded in North Africa and captured and was a prisoner of war for 2 years. So his military background was, terrible, to say the least.
Right.
He got released on a prisoner exchange in 43 or 44, and met my mom, and I was born in 46. But so he was very much. He was a military guy. He was, go to the Navy, go to the Air Force, do something. Don't go in the Army. I go, well, I already got the notice, and he was a basket case trying to figure out what to do, and I thought, well, I'll just go ahead. Oh no, he says, no, don't do that. Try to control what you do. And I always had that idea, if you got to do it, try to make it count a little bit. So when I got my notice, went to the recruiter, and he said, well, yeah, I can guarantee you that training in refrigeration and air conditioning repair in the Army. I can't guarantee anything else, but you will get the training in the MWS. So, I wasn't crazy about it. I didn't want to go in anyway. I had other things to do, and I feel like everybody says, thank you for your service, and I go, hey, thank the draft board. They drafted me. The Army joined me. I didn't join the Army initially. So anyway, that's what I ended up doing. Just if I got lemons, try to make lemonade. Try to make it count, and rather than wasting your time jumping on airplanes and whatever else was going on.
Mm-hmm. So then you said you went to training in December, right? After you got your draft notice, and then you went to training.
I went to a basic combat training in Fort Bliss, Texas, January through March, I guess. And then I went to refrigeration repair at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, from April to into June. April to June. And I was the first one. I was the honor graduate of the class because I already had the training, and I was the first guy that had orders to go to Vietnam. And I went to Vietnam on August 8th, 1967.
Where did you go your first time into Vietnam?
I was assigned to the 303rd Radio Research, headquarters company, 303rd Radio Research. They just call it R&R Battalion at 2nd Field Force compound. We didn't have I guess the closest village or Vietnam town or city was Benoit. So, and there was a bunch of other little hamlets and so on and so forth, but I wasn't interested in anybody's name over there.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to do there?
The R&R was they called it radio research, and it was a cover for the Army Security Agency, which is, you heard of the national security. They monitor radio signals from the enemy, and they are in a a compound, barbed wire compound, and they do all their secret stuff there. And the comm center, the communications center, was they use crypto equipment, which has to be climate control, which is air conditioning. So I was supposed to, keep up the air conditioning work.
Okay.
But the fly in the ointment was I had to have a top secret crypto clearance to work there. And they asked me, well, did you put in your clearance? And I go, clearance what? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh God, you ain't got a clearance? No. So I ended up, I was like electrician, generators, power distribution, electrician, convoys, a water truck driver, and anything else that nobody else wanted to do, I guess.
Did you do that the whole time you were in? So how long was this first tour into Vietnam?
My first and only tour was a year long.
A year long. And that's what you did for a year? Just everything?
I was, I never did get my clearance, so I never got to work in a compound.
Nice.
I did a lot of convoys. In the middle of my tour, my year, was the Tet Offensive. And so we were on the perimeter with a reactionary force for 3 or 4 weeks out there. And the first 6 months of my tour was really quiet and didn't seem like even a war to me. Although there was an artillery unit, there was a lot of flying around, shooting people and stuff. I never got involved in it until Tet. And we had a rocket attack, which scared me to death. Nobody was really killed. They blew up a lot of equipment, and just up the line, they had a frontal and a penetration into the camp. So, all kind of wild rumors and so on and so forth. But anyway, the next morning they come to helicopters and shot everybody up, dead bodies everywhere, just a big mess. That's when I really realized, dude, this is a real war and they're trying to kill me for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
What'd I do?
How did that make you feel, when that all happened? Like you said, you just realized it was a real war. So then,
I didn't have nothing to do with it other than being a victim of, a victim, that's a bad word, a participant in it, no control. The highest ranking person around was an E6. All the lieutenants, captains, and everybody else is back in the bunkers, and we were out on the line, and every once in a while we get some water. Somebody throws some water, into the bunkers we were in. Food was just boxes of K rations, I guess, C rations, I guess called.
Mm-hmm.
How did I feel about it? It wasn't that comfortable. But I'm not saying I relive it all the time, but it never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
The thoughts, the event.
Mm-hmm. You said it happened in your midterm of your time in Vietnam. So when when the first rocket attack happened and whatnot, how did you change? Were you just a little bit more careful when you did convoys and when you were out and about? Did you, look over your shoulder a little more?
Situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very aware of my situation from then on.
Yes.
They blew up our water station on the compound, so I had to go off compound. And that was another zoo. I don't want to get into it, but I witnessed a rape, drugs, just all kind of nonsense, And don't ask me to explain the whole thing. It's a real bad experience.
That time you went
I got
off
a
the
lot of
compound.
self-guilt over that.
That time you got to go off the compound, you saying?
Well, we
right?
had to because there wasn't no water. The rocket attack compromised the water point that we had, our water supply. So we were armed off. You know, there was 2 guys in a truck, and we got in line and got 600 gallons of water, probably 2 times a day.
How long did you have to do that until?
I don't know, 3 or 4 months.
Oh wow.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I can't remember. At least 3 or 4 or 5 months.
I'm just constantly going in to get water and stuff. Going to get water.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, we had tanks. They had a mess hall, a so-called shower made out of bomb. It was a big box or something, metal facility filled up and made a shower out of it. Everybody got to take cold showers if they wanted. And I took them out. I took water out to an orphanage too.
Wow.
About once a week, so that was something different.
okay. Now you were doing that because that was kind of, since you didn't have your clearance, you couldn't do the job you were
Yeah,
sent there
right.
for, right?
Anytime, that's called details.
Details.
In the Army, casual details. You don't get to sit around and wonder what's going on. If they got nothing else to do with you, you're painting the rocks and one day and you're taking the paint off the next day. So
So you basically did details for the whole year you were there? Pretty much.
pretty much. Well, like I said, driving a truck on convoys.
Right.
That isn't hardly a detail. It's kind of a duty. And a water truck thing, you know, I thought it was 24 hours on, 24 hours off, so it worked out.
Wow.
You don't have to been there to understand it, I guess.
Yeah. Are there, you said it a little bit how some of the stuff that happened off the compound stayed with you, but you don't try to dwell on it. Is there any one particular memory of your time in Vietnam that you do like to share with people?
No.
No.
With people, you know, if I sit here and explain the whole thing to you, let me think. If I explained the whole thing to you, you wouldn't understand.
Is that so? When you weren't married before you left, right? Were you married?
No, I was.
You were just in trade school and got drafted, and then you went. So you didn't have a girl back home.
Yeah.
Did you write with anybody? Did anybody send you letters while you were out there?
My mother had passed away in September, and I got drafted in, let's say, December. So my dad was never a letter writer. My aunt wrote me, you know, a little bit, quite a bit, really. Of course, my girlfriend did for about 6 months.
Oh, so you did have a girlfriend, though. And she wrote you. But you didn't, did you write back? But you didn't really explain anything. You just said hello.
Pretty much.
But you said only 6 months, so you guys broke up in the middle of your time while you were in Vietnam?
Well, I'll put it this way. When I first got there, the letters was 5 or 6 letters, or 5 or 6 pages, a couple times a week, and then 3 or 4 pages, a couple times a week, and then 2 or 3 pages every other week or so. And I think right before TED, right before January or whatever it was, January, February '69, she wrote me a little letter on company stationery saying she didn't have much time and I hope I was okay. And I wrote back and I go, hey, if you ain't got any time, you ain't got any time, you know. So that was the end of that.
Okay. Can you tell me about when you came home from
No, I
Vietnam?
don't want to go through that. Oh, you mean when I? Yeah. Okay. Well, it was pretty much indifference, you know. I never got spit on, yelled at, thrown stuff at me.
Where did you come through?
Let me think. I left Vietnam. We landed in Japan, and we took off and landed in Anchorage, Alaska, and then we landed in Peterson Air Force Base, I think, in New Jersey.
Oh.
And went through Fort Dix and Philadelphia, and you know, I was just some crumpled up. You know, we were wearing the same clothes for 2 days, and nobody said anything to me. And it was kind of funny. I remember this. We were on standby, and we got called for standby, and I got a first class seat because it was empty. And there was some guy across from me, and he, big silk suit, whatever, tie, businessman. And I didn't say nothing to him. He didn't say nothing to me, so I didn't say nothing to him. And about halfway through the flight to Chicago, he says, you go to Vietnam? I go, yeah, I'm just getting back. And he just kind of shook his head and he says, you know. I go, okay. So.
Interesting.
So I'm thinking, you know, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. That's the way it was. And my dad and stepmom picked me up, and we went home, and that was that.
But you stayed in for a little bit longer. You didn't just get out right away, right?
Yes, I did. I got out in December '69,
Okay.
and I, you know, I had a job repairing appliances, and you know, I've been to Bangkok, Tokyo, Hawaii, Alaska, all over the world, and I got this job, and I'm sitting there drinking thin coffee and crummy donuts with guys in a warehouse talking about their bowling scores. And it was very vanilla, you know, nothing exciting, you know. And I worked there about 8 months. I had some money saved, and so I just I sold everything, all my camera equipment, all my stereo equipment, and anything else I could get rid of. So my tools, and I just took off. I think I went to Minneapolis, visited a guy, went to Mobile, Alabama, went across to Jacksonville. My brother was stationed there in the Navy. Went down to Fort Lauderdale. Just kind of a hippie, seeing what's going on, you know. Get out and do something rather than sit there repairing junk I didn't even care anything about at the time.
Okay.
Although it was a good job, but a lot of my plans I had, you know, when I came back were, the whole world seemed like it turned 180 degrees, and I thought, what am I doing sitting here, you know? I'm just gonna wither up and drop and blow away if I don't get going. I went to Charleston, South Carolina, Nashville, Memphis, tried to get a job on the riverboats. I went down to Greenville, Natchez, Vicksburg, looking for a job, but in 70, there was a recession and nobody's hiring and nobody's doing nothing, so I decided to go to, maybe try school, you know. So I went to a community college up in Columbus. They call it junior college at the time. And I took some courses and listened. And for the first time in school, I thought, well, maybe I'll be interested. But politics was so different at the time, you know. We're sitting there arguing. The kids were sitting there arguing about politics in biology class, or, you know. I go, you don't even know what you're talking about. You know, I'd been to Vietnam. I'd been halfway around the world, and they never had got out of the county. And I thought, maybe this ain't for me. So I went back in the Army. I got my rank back. I went to Korea. And I had met my wife, I think, in '70, and we corresponded. And let me think, I came back from Korea, stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. So I used to fly back every couple months. And long story short, ended up getting married. So our plan was to stay in the military, retire, you know, and do whatever we wanted to do after that. Well, that was plan A. And I think about 5 minutes after she saw what the Army was, that ain't gonna work anymore. So, my son was born in March of '74, and I got put on orders to Germany about a week later. And I told him, I said, hey, I just had my son, baby, you know, my wife's still in the hospital. Well, you gotta get her out into someplace back home, and you'll probably see her in a couple of years, you know, in Germany. And I go, hey, my enlistment is over in June. Well, you'll have to re-enlist. And I go, no, I'm gone, you know. So we had bought a new car, and I had to make the payment, so I joined the Army Reserve when I got out to make the payment. I was pretty much in the back of my mind to go ahead and make the reserve a career, so I did. And I spent 17 years in the reserve. And you want to hear about that?
I do. Well, I want to know where you were at the time. So you were at Fort Lewis, right?
Fort Lewis when I got married, yeah.
When you got married. And then you got out. And then joined the reserves in Washington?
No, in Fremont.
Oh, so you came back to Nebraska.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was like. Okay, so now you're back in Nebraska.
Yeah, we moved back to Fremont, and, you know, I couldn't find a job doing any kind of repair work. Everybody wanted experience. Let me think. You have to envision this air conditioner, window air conditioner is what I worked on in 1966. Mm-hmm. And everything was changing over to central units with your furnace. Mm-hmm. And when I got out, they wanted experience with centrals, and I go, they just started putting them in. I've been in the military. How could I get any experience? Well, we can't use you, you know. And it's pretty cut and dry. Maybe my job-seeking skills weren't as good as they should have been. And, you know, so I'm trying to think. Okay, so I found a job in Omaha. Excuse me, my throat is getting croaked.
Do you want some water?
So, got a job in Omaha. So I was driving back and forth to Fremont an hour every day. You know, if you work 8 hours, it's really 10 hours because you're an hour in, an hour back. So we decided to move. We didn't want to move to Omaha. We didn't want to stay in Fremont. So we were looking at Valley, Waterloo, Credna, Elkhorn, and a house came up in Elkhorn. So we moved to Elkhorn. So I joined let me think. I was in the supply unit in Fremont, and there were guys that were gray-headed with no rank at all, and I thought, my career path here don't look too great, you know, so They had promised me a promotion within 6 months, and that didn't come through. So I joined a unit. It was the 322nd Armored Cavalry on 21st and Woolworth. And they didn't have any refrigeration repair there. It was Armored Cavalry and some support MOSs. And really, the only way to make any promotion in the Army, period, the active duty or reserve, is to have a combat MOS, infantry, armored cavalry, artillery. So they said they could, I could get some training and be an armored cavalry scout. Actually, just like my dad did the same thing in the Army, you know, when he was in. And so I passed all that training, and they sent me to drill sergeant school at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Some of the trainers here, but the final training was at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So I had attended a NCO Academy, 9th Infantry NCO Academy at Fort Lewis, and it was pretty much the same thing. The only thing is you get a Smoky Bear hat when you get out of drill sergeant school. And it was, I always liked a challenge, or you know, I don't like somebody telling me it's really tough to do that. You know, in high school, we were always, well, when you get to this grade, it's going to be tougher. You'll never understand that. And I thought, now why would you say that, you know? So when I got in the Army, I liked the challenge. I liked something to do. And I got promoted pretty quick up to E7. And I hung around the unit there for 12 years, and my politics weren't the greatest. And I was 40 years old, and they gave everybody stress tests that was over 40, or 40 and over. And my cholesterol, I think, set a world record for 40 years old. I think it was over 400, you know. And they said, no, that's, you know, you're pre-heart attack or something, possibly. So I had to find another unit. I went to the 5049th USAR at Fort Omaha. And about a year later, I was in charge of retraining, is that what they call it? Let's put it this way. When a soldier moves from Ogallala to Omaha, and his MOS is a cook or something, and there's no cook slots or places to place him, he's got to requalify in something else. And so I taught that requalification course. And I was a manager, I think, for 3 or 4 years, and really enjoyed that. And after Desert Storm, the whole military changed. There was so much stand downs, and so many units lost their mission that I already had my time in, so I got out, retired.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you did what, 4 years?
12 years in the 21st and Woolworth unit, our 322nd Armored Cav, and about 5 years in the school, the United States Army Reserve School. And like I said, I was in charge. I signed all the paperwork. One of my friends, we were going to do something, he goes, well, you know, they won't like that. Now, I said, who are you talking about, they? Well, back at headquarters, I go, when you say they, you're looking at me. I'm they. I'm the one that signs all the paperwork. I approve everything. So if I say it's okay, it's okay. And I'll answer any questions from anybody from headquarters.
So, did you do any other, I don't know, did you go overseas ever again in the reserves? No.
I had a chance to go to Reforger, but I'm a motorcycle guy too. I think I had an accident in '82. I was in a hospital, in and out for 3 months, off work, no train. I didn't go to Army. I didn't go to the training sessions because I was in the hospital. And there was I didn't sue anybody, but anytime there's an accident, there's an investigation, and if you go back to work, you're not going to get any compensation, so if they can prove I'm going, I mean, in the Army, at the time, there wasn't much to do on the weekends. So you didn't have to, you could almost do it when you're half dead, but still it's training, so I stayed out until settlement was over.
After all this time and everything, you only had one son? How many kids did you have while you were?
One.
Just the one son?
Yeah.
Does your son ever ask you about your time in the military or anything?
Yes and no. It's the same as you're talking about, if I try to explain, I'll try to explain stuff to him as like, well, I thought this and I thought that, and I said, no, it's not that way. He joined the Army Reserve, and he joined some other unit that I wouldn't have, he didn't even ask me about joining. He didn't tell me he was going to join, he didn't tell me what he was going to do. He didn't ask for my opinion, which I thought was not right. But he did what he did, so. And he's kind of that way with everything. When I give him advice, it's like, I'll think about it. Well, I've already been through it. I know what I'm talking about. And he just seems to ignore common sense. But that's my opinion.
Did you ever talk to your wife about anything? Like your time, you met your wife after Vietnam, correct?
Pretty much.
And you were with your wife when you went to Korea?
Yeah, we were.
That you were dating?
We were dating, yeah.
Yeah, talking. But she didn't really ask about it, or you didn't tell her, you never felt the need to talk about it. What did you do in Korea? I'm not even sure what you did in Korea.
I was assigned to, it was kind of a same thing type situation as,
Did you not have your clearance?
I got there, and I was assigned to a Army hospital. In the power distribution, power plant. And I went to let me think, I was assigned to the maintenance and supply division, and they looked at my orders and they go, well, what are you doing here? And I go, well, this is where they sent me, And they go, well, the Korean civilians run the power plant. And I go, what's that mean? They go, well, you don't want to go work with the Koreans. You don't even understand Korean, right? No. And they said, well, hey, we need a handyman in the hospital, so I was like a repair guy. I worked in maintenance a little bit, but I didn't know anything about medical equipment. If it didn't buzz when it's supposed to, I might could fix a switch or a light or something, but so it was just another, it has to go on in the military all the time. If I'd have never been in the military, I don't think I'd ever been missed. A lot of guys do a lot of important jobs, but everything I did seemed like, we don't, let me think, we'll find something else to do for you to do, So anyway, oh yeah, okay, in Korea, I worked in a hospital 3 or 4 months. They were combining a evacuation hospital with a a place that had a structure. This was mostly tents, and they had structures, but they weren't permanent. Anyway, they were combining and made a just kind of a, I forget what they call it, but anyway, it was another hospital, and they needed somebody to run the medical supply warehouse, and they asked me if I wanted to do that. So I worked with two truck drivers, and we would get orders for supplies, and then the Koreans would. You had 2 Korean civilians who worked there. They knew everything, and they would pull the supplies. The guys would drive them back, and I just ran the whole show there.
Well, that's good. You built a new hospital, basically, right?
Oh, do what?
You built up a new hospital?
I didn't have nothing to do with building.
Oh.
It was just supplies.
The supplies
It was
for the
medical
hospital.
Supplies like hand lotion. I can't remember. I can't remember everything I had, but it wasn't medications. It was like sheets and bunks and stuff like that.
Okay. Very interesting. Well, any other, I don't know. So I know of Vietnam and I know of Korea. Any other overseas time? That was the only 2 times, right? Because you never went to Germany. Any, I guess, or any final thoughts on your time in the service?
Well, I don't I regret being drafted. I was forced. I consider it conscripted. Conscripted, is that the word? Here's your letter. You can go to jail. You can go in the military. Maybe go to Canada. Those were choices I had to make, and or just anything. Well, with my dad and the culture in those days, you had a lot of pressure to conform and do what was expected of you. And I kind of resent that now because I didn't have any say in it.
Right.
And when I say resent, I mean, I'm not ashamed to go on. I probably, let me think, I probably am a better person because I did. And when I say that, I mean, I learned goal setting, planning, decisions, choices. And I was in charge. I was in charge of a lot, and that's your self-image, your self, the way you feel about yourself. I've been the NCO in charge at machine gun ranges with 250 people participating in that. And at the time, I was just a nervous wreck about it, but after it's all over, I'm the guy that pulled this off.
Mm-hmm. So it's not that you don't regret your time, you just don't like the fact that you were forced into that lifestyle?
Pretty much. Well, you're a volunteer for this? Do you work full-time? Or?
I do.
Okay, well, I don't know what you do. It doesn't make any difference. So you are an accountant or something, and somebody comes in and say, hey, you're going to go over and work over here, for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And no questions asked, you got to do it. How would you feel? Well, wait a minute. What about my plans, Mm-hmm. So that'll never go away.
Yeah. Did you tell your son that when he decided that he wanted to join? Did did you tell him how, the one thing about joining in the
You
military?
got kids?
I have kids. I've also,
Okay, do you tell your kids what to do? Do they do it all the time?
well, I share with my kids, my
Well,
time.
my dad, okay, I'll tell you my experience. My dad was in a prisoner of war camp for 2 years, and I don't think he ever got out. He wouldn't make a major decision. He was an alcoholic, and his coping was just go get drunk and disappear for weeks. Nobody knew where he was at. So, my guidance and help along the way was trivial at best. I mean, in high school, I remember going into ninth grade, and you make choices of what you want to take. Well, I didn't know what to do. My mom had only had an eighth grade education, and she didn't feel like she knew how to guide you. And here I got my drunk old dad on the couch asleep in his underwear. He did. He wanted to help me out with this. He didn't even know what I was talking about. And it's hard to blame him. I mean, he was a prisoner of war, and alcohol was the drug that was used to deal with post-trauma in those days. But still, you got married, you got a family. Where are you at when they need you? So that's the way I grew up. Okay, when I had my son, I told myself, hey, if this kid needs a question answered, I will answer that question. I'll try and tell him good and bad, and hopefully help him make a good choice or decision. Well, it just never seemed to work out that way. He has a lot of personality of my dad and of his mom's uncles and stuff, An example, I'll tell you an example. I had rental property, so I had to do some work on it. My back was hurting me, and I asked him to help me. He goes, yeah, sure. When? I said, well, anytime you want, Sunday, okay. And I got to lay some carpet, help me take up the old, put it down. And he got to the house, and he goes, well, where's the carpet? I said, why ain't you picked it up yet? Well, I'm in a hurry. He says, I got things to do, I go, well, go ahead and go home then. Go do them. I said, you said you'd help me. I didn't tell you about time limit or anything. Oh, no, I'll go. So we got to the house, started taking up the carpet, and he's looking at the lights. He goes, those light fixtures are ancient, He said, you ought to put newer stuff in here. And the thermostat, he said, my God, man, maybe you've seen them, those old Honeywell thermostats, they're mercury control, really. And he goes, I ain't seen them in forever. Why don't you replace some of this stuff? And I go, hey, I got you over here to help me, not to give me
more work.
Appraisal of what you think, And that's pretty much his way of doing things. That's the way we operate. I'll tell you another. Oh, he's going down to see his daughter in Casa Grande, Arizona, 1,300 miles, I think. And he was going to leave in the evening and drive as far as he could, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whenever they got off work. And I said, don't do that. I said, when you get off work, pack your stuff, sleep, go to sleep early, get up early. I said, you can probably make about 600, 650 miles before you hit a hotel. And then you can sleep and eat and feel better when you get up. And it's another 650 miles. So you're only one night on the road. I said, if you leave in the evening, you ain't going to get very far, maybe 400 miles. And I said, you're going to have 800 or 900 the next day, and you're never going to make it, so you're going to be 2 nights on the road, and you're going to be wore out by the time you get there, Well, I'll have to think about it. I go, I just got back from doing it, you know. So they left yesterday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They got to Dodge City, Kansas about 10 o'clock at night. So they're wore out when they get there. And they got up this morning at 850 miles to go. So they're never going to drive that, you know. So what am I trying to say is, I can save you from a lot of things, but I can't save you from yourself.
That's fun. That's good advice, or not advice. It's a true statement.
Outlook. That's the way after growing up with my dad, the way he was about decisions, I never asked his advice on anything pretty much after I got out of the Army, because it was worthless. I mean, I remember we bought our first house there in Elkhorn and lived there 6-7 years before we upgraded a little bit. And I never told him I was going to sell it or buy anything. And he goes, "Where's your new place?" You know, I go, "I come on, we'll go to a new house." "Oh man, this is really nice, you know." And what'd you do with the other place? I said, "Well, I sold it." He said, "Well, did you sell it?" I go, "No, I had a realtor." "Well, how much did it cost?" I go, "I think it's 7%, you know." "Oh my God, you paid him $3,000 just to sell a place?" And right away I'm thinking, you don't even know what you're talking about, you know. This guy takes care of everything. He advertises, he shows a house. He had it sold in 3 days, I think. And at the time, I didn't have the background to do that or the inclination. So I said, well, yeah, you know, that's the last time I'll tell him about any other deals I go through, because my dad was the youngest child of 40 elder. Well, I think my grandpa was 49 years old when he was born. So my dad was raised more like a grandchild than a child. And inheritances, he lived on inheritances his whole life. My grandpa left him $1 million and he didn't even know it. A business, a place to live, and I don't want to get into all that, but he just threw it away. And that's his business, I guess. That was his business at the time, but I always thought, who are you thinking about? You know, I got an inheritance from my aunt, and my dad too, because he couldn't sell it. And I felt like I should use the principal, spend the principal, or no, I should use the interest, but keep the principal, you know. But my dad never garnished that way of looking at things. What's that got to do with Vietnam? Well, nothing really, but you know, I'm 76 years old, so everybody says hindsight is 20/20. So I got a lot of hindsight to reference.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are we getting too long here?
No. Is there anything else you want to share with me about your time in the service?
You know, I don't want to get into politics. It would be political. It would be something that I've been over 100 times. And just like I said, if I explained it to you, you probably wouldn't understand anyway. It's really been traumatic, really. So I go to mental health down at the VA, and I still wake up every day, and not before my first cup of coffee is done, I'm thinking about Vietnam. And the whole, not the day in Vietnam, not a month in Vietnam, but from the time my draft notice really until up until today, you know. And the thing that really, you know, causes me to is aggravation is I didn't have a choice. Everybody now is getting I don't care. They should get parades. They should get parades. They should get pictures and medals. And I got plenty of medals. But I got to think about what I want to say. At the time I got drafted, it was like not one football player in high school got drafted. Not one kid, not one lawyer's kid, not doctor's kid, or anybody else. So the draft really wasn't fair. And now, I don't know how much the government spends on advertising, but they're selling you the military. I made $100 a month when I went to Vietnam. My pay was $100 a month. Thank God I didn't have to pay income tax. But now they got kids making $2,500 a month, you know. And where was all that equity when I was around? Where was all that, you're doing a great job, you know, whether you were or not. So that's the adjustments I think I have to make, and I don't know if that's the reason I'm here or not, but you understand what I'm talking about?
I do.
I finally got into a seminar and management stuff, and they say the only thing consistent throughout your life is called change. Everything will change. So embrace it, because it ain't gonna go away, or at least adjust to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if somebody asks me why I'm the way I am, I says, well, I'm just trying to adjust, man.
Just to change.
Yeah. I'm not ashamed of anything I did in the military. It's, like I said, I should be a little more grateful, but here again, it wasn't my choice. It was the government's choice. And after all the information that came back, when I was in high school, they said Johnson, the LBJ, he's been recorded as saying, I don't think we can win the war. We shouldn't even be in it. Well, you know, common sense says to me, what do we do in it, you know? And it really threw a wrench into all my planning. I was finally, after you know, putting up with my dad the way he was, I thought, I remember in high school, I bought my own senior ring, my class ring, I paid for my pictures, all the fees and stuff. I worked at a gas station part-time and paid for all my stuff. My dad didn't pay, you know, he just wasn't reliable. Not saying he wasn't a great guy, but you'd have to hold a gun on people to make them say something bad about him. But hey, hindsight, it's the way it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story. It was a very interesting story. And I'm going to turn this off now.